you eyeballs? What did you see?
It couldn't have been me, sir. I was front row in my AOC t-shirt, foie gras sucking on a press release, sir. My head down, fourth shot, good little sheep, sir. Sit down, sweetie. The adults are gonna speak first. They trust the science and they're terrified of research. Here to thank our healthcare heroes, they've been feeding to the burnout, feet first. Until suddenly they dip mid-shift, take a header off a bridge. Such a shame, they were really such a sweet nurse. Now they'll never get the card and the cold slice of pizza meant to thank them for their teamwork. Now they'll never get the baggie full of checks mixed, which would be the one reward they'd see for the moms they had to intubate. And the countless cries of grief since we've been haunted by the specter of the C-word. Now all the applause for our healthcare heroes rings a very hollow note because we played it out like Freebird. See, add the ones and zeros in our fragile checks and balances, or checks for all the wealthy who have such unholy talents that we think it's patriotic that we all got zero balances. And re-elect Pelosi so she'll face our toughest challenges, which is analogous to water for a drowning man. Nancy disregards our impoverished with a spiteful and dismissive little waving of her withered hand. Cause 500,000 freezing on the streets is Biden's winter plan. And I bet you swore they told you you were voting for a different man. But really all you wanted was a different man. It didn't make a fucking difference if he finishes the previous inhabitant's agenda and starts auctioning protected land. Biden's born to leap at any war a donor's check demands. Turns out that you can't cure greed once it infects a man. Once they lose respect for human life and focus all their fucking efforts on the oil baron rescue plan. Honey, what are we to Hecuba or Hecuba to us that if she's starving we should give a damn? Why should we be moved to tears if someone isn't eating? We won't even recognize that food is essential to our being. It's just us and motherfucking Israel who will not guarantee that food's a basic human right. Because starvation is our favorite tool of genocide disguised as sanctioned democratic healing. That's me in the corner, losing my religion, gouging out my eyes and then dancing on the ceiling. Jesus fucking Christ, what a feeling.
Hey, what about you eyeballs? What did you see?
Just an off-the-cuff chat between you and me. Us. We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Who are these people?
It's us. We're these people.
I love that intro. I love that intro so much.
I'm here with a different co-host this time, Oz LaFave.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on.
Friend of the show, DJ Joe Nice. How are you, friend?
What's good? And you hear Nick say this all the time. The United States is the most propagandized country in the world.
We are so fucked, you guys. Again, I'm sorry for being cynical, but seriously, we're fucked. We are fucked. We are well and truly fucking fucked.
Just appreciate all the work that you do and the platforms that you all are providing.
Hey, you. Doing good. How are you guys doing?
I think as independent media, we have a responsibility to be, we don't hide our bias, obviously, but we must stay true to the facts.
What's up, Pam?
Cheers and salutations. Smoke them if you got them.
But I am here with a man that I've been waiting to talk to for the last couple of years, Nico House.
As an educator, what I would suggest is that, first of all, podcasts like these are made.
So you need to be an example for the people and for the future, knowing that your words can actually change the future.
What do you feel? What would Kwame Ture feel we would have to do?
Well, politics is every day of every minute. You have to be aware of what's going on. Not voting on one day, so the vote has never meant anything. So I'm not a Democrat.
See, I would call that guy the Black Obama.
the issues that we talk about. Listen to us.
As always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
INN News.
Wait, we gotta get Care Bears up here. Oh, took me a second. I was like, I realized it last second. I'm like, oh my god, I gotta pop it out. I gotta do the thing. Oh my god. What's up, everybody? Yeah. Why does Twidget look?
What are you saying, Reef? You're trying to send me away?
There we go. Yes. Into outer space. Where where's that at? Do I have that on the thing?
Yes, you do.
Probably space. It just takes like 30 minutes to just a new
I think
world.
the moment's passed now.
Yeah, it's gone. I lost it. I gotta put those on the soundboard. It takes literally like 30 seconds to load up some pages on my soundboard. I don't know why. But anyway, let's get to some important stuff. So, pinned in the chat is a link to Shanda's GoFundMe. She is now battling some difficult medical things, so she would appreciate some financial support. So please go to that pinned chat and give a couple, little dollary dues that way.
How much? It's hard for me to do. How much money she raised so far? There we go.
4, 5, almost 5,000. So I bet you guys could make that up in today. So, get to work. Put that in. Match some of these donations. Do it up.
Like,
gotta help out our peoples.
Of course, we would ask you guys, as usual, take care of your families, take care of your communities, take care of yourself first. And obviously, we would say to you guys, obviously, donate to us if you are so kind. But in this case, Shonda is one of our closest friends in the space. Her and Oz are great friends and colleagues. Reef especially has known much longer than me, but even with me, both of them have been very supportive of INN.
Had her on the show. Been very good.
And it sucks. And obviously, this is kind of personal for me in a way, because my dad has been dealing with cancer for over 30 years now. And so cancer sucks ass, and it sucks that one of our close colleagues in the space now has to deal with an aggressive form of lung cancer. And as I tweeted out, I think over the weekend, it just sucks that our country does not take care of people like Shonda, but rather we're willing to send bombs overseas in order to kill
How does Tupac put it?
Black and brown people.
We got money for war, no money for the poor, something like that.
I mean, that should probably be on. That should probably be on the soundboard.
Yes, I can find that.
You can do that later. But yeah, so yeah, if you guys obviously take care of yourselves, and I will say, if you do give tonight, I would rather you give to Shonda, because she will be going through chemo, and chemo is not cheap. And I'm not entirely sure how many rounds she'll have to go through. So, it's going to be a battle for her. So, so we'll definitely keep her in her spirits. That being said, she is appreciative of how much she has raised and how much people have donated. So if you don't follow her on Twitter, follow her at Trailer Park Pundit.
That's the one.
Right?
Yep.
Follow her. You should be following her anyway, but follow her and send some love, either through a message or through donation.
I'll go put her link in the chat too while we're thinking about it. Anyway, we brought some stories. So
I think you brought an extra one.
I did.
This week, right?
Yep.
But
nice short little extra one.
But first off, how are you?
I'm doing okay. About as good as I can be. So, trying not to be completely depressed by everything in the world at the minute, but you know, that's tough these days. So, but yeah, I mean, we're trying to look into some of the stuff recently with them accusing Russia of interfering again to the tune of like 10 million, something like that, which is nothing compared to what APAC and plenty of other countries give. So, you know, we're trying to dig into some of that. So keep an eye out for the stories that we're going to be doing on that one. Let me share link to profile. There it is. So yeah, go follow Shanda on the tweets. She'll give you lovely updates of what's happening. Oz the Boomer in the chat. What's up, Oz? Appreciate you. I can't even. You got too many hearts. I can't select your message. Too many hearts in that message, Oz. But appreciate you showing up.
I'll do this instead.
Yay! Look at that. Isn't that nice? I like that you have that ability. It's your superpower.
Superpower.
Yep. Right. What stories you bring? You brought.
So you mentioned APAC.
Yes.
We've talked about J Street before, regarding the squad, more specifically Bowman, who took money from the squad, took money from J Street once upon a time. And yeah, APAC obviously gets a lot of focus, and deservedly so, but we don't talk about J Street much, if at all, in media. And I can argue they are probably just as, if not even more so, responsible to what's happening in Gaza in a more two-sided way, I would say.
Yeah.
So found this article of how KAMALA is connected with J Street, but you know, I mean, we know she's an APAC, you know, stooge, and given her husband is also Zionist, it makes perfect sense. But we are going to talk about J Street and their connections to potential new president. And later on tonight, well, I'm back in school now. School's back in session for me. Colleges are back in session now as well. And many of them have picked up where they left off in the spring in terms of protesting on campus.
Yep.
But now college administrators are
working
hammering
overtime.
that down somewhat, as expected. So we're going to talk about later on how they do that, or how they plan to do that. So for those of you, if you guys, any of our fam audience members are in college, this might be a good article to even read. Like we always do, all of our articles are listed in the description, but this might be something you might want to know about in terms of any protests you might consider doing on your campus, that you are aware of the information that we're about to give you. So, but that will be coming up later. And then what do you have, Reef?
Well, I have a article by Ramsey Baroud about why Israel is doing some of the torture that it is doing. They have some reasons, so we're going to get into that. And last week, I brought a story from Eva Barlett about her time in Gaza, and I told you last week that there was a part 1 to that story, so we're going to do her part 1 as a part 2. So, you know, we're going to do that about her time in the West Bank and fun stuff and what she experienced there. So, you know, should be good. And I brought an extra story on some fun police surveillance. So stay tuned for that one. Anything else? I think that's it. Cool. Well, as always, if you check in that the chat right at the top, little pinned chat is Shanda's GoFundMe. Please go give some donos to that. But you know, if you want to, You can also donate to us. You can scan that QR code on your screen. Go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork. We appreciate every little bit that helps keep the light on. Plenty of you already help us do that. You know, you know who you are. Your name's up there. Plenty of ways you can do that. Cash App, Patreon, all that stuff's in the description below. So, you know, it's just, well, we sometimes want to say thank you. Right. Let's get to our first one, Care Bear.
All right. So, J Street, Kamala Harris. What is the connection? Well, as you guys know, AIPAC gets a lot of focus in media given how much money they have spent towards buying off politicians. Pretty much, I would argue, most of them in government, Kamala Harris included. You don't hear about J Street that much. And as I said earlier, J Street is kind of significant with Jamal Bowman as he took money initially from them. And then he went to Israel and saw the error of his ways and, you know, switched it up, but didn't help because now he's kind of a lame duck right now as he is planning to leave Congress within the next couple of months. But I did want to bring this article in terms of, in as much as we talk about AIPAC, we don't talk about J Street nearly as much as I think we probably should. And I would argue J Street in a lot of ways is even more dangerous because they kind of walk the line between, being defenders of Israel, but at the same time, expressing concern, I would say, for Palestinians and wanting a two-state solution. So, and you can kind of hear that in terms of, Kamala's rhetoric around Israel, but we'll get into that.
So, Global Solidarity in the chat. J Street is a nonprofit liberal advocacy group whose stated aim is to promote American leadership to end the Arab-Israeli and Israeli-Palestinian conflicts peacefully and diplomatically. That's their stated. That's what they say, right?
That's what they say.
Yeah.
But we'll get into the article and kind of connect it to Kamala, and you can make, and I'm sure most of our audience is kind of in the know, but you guys can hopefully figure this out for yourself, how J Street, in a way, is not much better than AIPAC. So, the article is brought to you by Consortium News, written by Abba A. Solomon, who writes, liberal Zionists cheer as Harris coddles genocidal Israel. For J Street's leadership, the current U.S. policy of enabling the slaughter of Palestinian civilians hits the spot, writes Abba A. Solomon. So he continues. Hours after U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris gave her acceptance speech at the DNC, the president of the pro-Israel, pro-peace organization J Street took a victory lap in an effusive email to supporters. Wow, Jeremy Ben-Ami wrote, what a week. As J Streeters leave the Democratic National Convention fired up and ready to go, it's clear we're having a greater impact than ever. Wow. He added that the vice president's remarks on Israel-Palestine were perhaps the clearest articulation of J Street's values for a presidential nominee. But what are those values and how do they apply to what's happening in Gaza?
Let me guess. Two-state solution. Got to have a two-state. Cannot have a liberalized Palestinian state. Probably for some ceasefire nonsense that, isn't really a thing. There's been multiple ceasefires already through the history of Gaza. Guess what? They're still being genocided. Funny that. So, but anyway, I'm sure we'll get to that. So,
discussing Gaza, Harris's DNC acceptance speech began with the anodyne evocation of working on a ceasefire of Gaza's pounding that America is funding. President Biden and I are working around the clock because now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done. Blah, 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 blah.
Fucking okay.
Then came the ironclad pledge of eternal support for Israel, justified in this case by the October 7th Hamas raid. And let me be clear, I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself. Key to Harris's brief discussion of Gaza in her acceptance speech was the customary refusal in American political discourse to attribute the slaughter to the U.S. or to its Israeli partner. Instead, there was a reference to what has happened, evoking victims without victimizers.
You exist in the context of all.
Oh, you can might as well finish it.
I've cut that shit off. She don't need more than that. You know,
well,
she says it about 18 times in a row most of the time. So
right. Well, you're going to hear a lot more of her, so it's just as well for about a couple of minutes. So,
what a great picture they have on this. This is a lovely thumbnail they chose.
Actually, I should have used that.
You know,
but all the same. Now I didn't watch the DNC because I was sick that week, fortunately. And I didn't see much of her speech, actually, come to think of it. Just as well I didn't, because didn't hear that it was that good. But we're going to isolate the part where she does talk about Israel.
Right.
So this clip comes from, Middle East Eye clipped this out. So shout out to them for doing that. So let's hear in full what Kamala has to say regarding the Israel-Gaza assault.
With respect to the war in Gaza, President Biden and I are working around the clock, because now is the time to get a hostage deal and a ceasefire deal done. And let me be clear, I will always stand up for Israel's right to defend itself, and I will always ensure Israel has the ability to defend itself, because the people of Israel must never again face the horror that a terrorist organization called Hamas caused on October 7th.
Yeah, fuck you.
Including unspeakable sexual violence and the massacre of young people at a music festival. At the
sexual violence that has been purported to be a lie, but, you know, okay, whatever.
Same time, what has happened in Gaza over the past 10 months is devastating. So many innocent lives lost. Desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety over and over
I thought
again.
That
I
thought that was Israel's right to defend itself. What happened?
Right, but you notice already how she goes into Hamas did this, Hamas.
Yes, before.
But she talks about the suffering of Palestinians, but she doesn't say why.
A part of this
why
is
are
that
they running? Why are they being slaughtered?
They know that this gets clipped up, right? So clip A is I support Israel. Clip B is Palestinian suffering is bad.
Right, but again, it's the idea of why are they suffering.
Yes.
She doesn't say that.
The soundbite won't be anything about that. It'll be, you know, they're suffering, that's bad. Right. Or it'll be I stand with Israel. You know, it just depends on which people they're trying to pander to that minute. So you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth faster, honestly. You know?
Right.
So it's literally right after each other. It's ridiculous.
Suffering is heartbreaking.
Yeah.
President Biden and I are working to end this war.
While he's on vacation at the beach. Pretty hard to do that from there. I'm just saying, you know.
That Israel is secure, the hostages are released, the suffering in Gaza ends, and the Palestinian people can realize their right to dignity, security, freedom, and self-determination.
But not their own liberation. So
yeah. So I actually do have thoughts on this, but I'll save that to the end. But let's continue with the article. I just wanted to show that because, again, I didn't see the acceptance speech, and I'm not going to, but I think it's good to kind of highlight what she was saying there in light of this article. But anyway, after pledging unconditional support for Israel's military, Harris expressed sorrow as if the horrors of being afflicted by a force of nature, not a military force that the U.S. government supplies with fundamental and essential support.
Yeah.
Style aside, what Harris articulated about Israel-Palestine in her speech was no different from what President Joe Biden has been saying and doing since last fall, while enabling the slaughter of Palestinian civilians. The vehement enthusiasm from J Street, perhaps the USA's leading liberal Zionist organization, is illuminating. Harris carefully omitted any mention of the only way that the US government can actually put the end to the suffering in Gaza, that she called heartbreaking, an arms embargo to stop the huge shipments from the United States that provide the Israeli military with the weapons and ammunition it's using to continue to massacre Palestinian people of all ages. The Harris speech was consistent with the National Party's new platform, which J Street helped shape. Ben Ami proudly wrote, but full affirmation of Biden's policies toward the Gaza carnage should not have been any cause of celebration. As a Palestinian American who is elected Democrat to Colorado State House, it has been disheartening to witness Biden facilitate and abet Israel's brutal war on Gaza with billions of dollars in U.S. weapons, Iman Johei wrote during the convention. Harris said the arms embargo, which human rights organizations have been calling for, is off the table, but that she supports a ceasefire. However, to truly reach a ceasefire and prevent a regional conflict, the U.S. must halt the arms shipment that fuel the conflict.
It won't.
The British medical journal The Lancet estimates that well over 100,000 residents of Gaza will die because of the Israeli bombardment and siege since October 7th, as hunger and disease are endemic and housing and infrastructure have been systematically destroyed.
Kamala literally in interview said that she would not stop shipments of arms to Israel. So, you know.
So this is Jeremy Ben-Ami, who is associated with J Street, who tweeted, couldn't be prouder of VP Harris for her remarks on Israel-Palestine and of Democrats' reaction. This is what it means in 2024 to be pro-Israel, pro-peace, and pro-democracy.
Tells you what's first, don't it? What comes first for them? Like
pro-Israel.
Yes, first and foremost, that's what they require.
Right. At the convention, the parents of a hostage held by Hamas since October 7th spoke. Actually, that was
yes.
What's his face?
Yeah.
I forgot his name. Who died this week or over the weekend.
Who Israel bombed, yes.
Yes. But no Palestinian American was allowed to say anything. In effect, the convention's podium was a place of apartheid, mirroring the reality of Israel's apartheid system.
Funny how that works.
In his email, Ben-Ami wistfully noted the missed opportunity. Hosting the first ever Palestinian speaker at a national convention would have been a powerful way to underscore the shared goal of an immediate ceasefire and hostage deal and the compassion of the party feels for Palestinians and Israelis alike. I'm sorry, what? To underscore the shared goal of an immediate ceasefire.
Yes.
By not having a Palestinian speak.
Which I saw the other day, too, that people were bringing up ceasefire and the arms deal shipment, being like those two don't coincide. And all the pro-Israel ones are like, people are acting like ceasefire means complete disarmament. And it's like, no, those of us who are actually paying attention know that's not the case. Like, and which is why we have an issue with it. So, but yeah, I mean, just oxymorons everywhere, practically.
Yeah.
So,
J Street is determined to help ensure that liberal Zionism does not question the ironclad U.S. commitment to Jewish nationalist control in Palestine, as discussed in articles I co-wrote that were published 10 years ago and last spring.
Yeah.
The organization is eager to define the limits of acceptable criticism of Israeli government policies from the Democratic Party establishment, setting aside human rights considerations as secondary to the mantra of Israel's quote-unquote right to exist. Whether apartheid South Africa had a quote-unquote right to exist is not a topic open for discussion. J Street represents untenable liberal American Zionism that clings to the fantasy of a democratic and humane quote-unquote Jewish state. Washington police office holders pledge continued weapons resupply for that fantasy Jewish state, with no connection to the actual Israel that is now engaged in remorseless genocide. So this is a tweet that you sent. There was actually something else that I saw earlier today, but I forgot to upload it. So maybe I will post it on, I think I saw it on Instagram. So I'll post it on Twitter later, if not tomorrow, if I remember.
Yeah.
This is from @BlackRedGuard1, who said, "Quit saying permanent ceasefire. Say the victory of the Palestinian people and their army, because that's the only way a permanent ceasefire will happen."
Right.
So yeah, I had some thoughts on this this morning, actually.
Okay.
I would argue, given this article, that J Street has probably slightly more of an influence on KAMALA than AIPAC does.
Sure.
Because AIPAC is definitely like right-wing, hawkish, like pro-Israel to the T, like fuck the Palestinians, like all of that. Like they make it very clear, like they do not care about the Palestinians at all. J Street, as I said earlier, kind of toes the lines of, yes, we're pro-Israel and we want Israel the right to exist, but these poor Palestinians, we must also help them to determine like a two-state solution and all that other bullshit. And that's exactly what you have heard KAMALA say basically throughout her campaign, in terms of Israel must have a right to exist, but at the same time, you know, the carnage that the Palestinians are going through is horrible, without any mention as to why the Palestinians are suffering.
Well,
again, at the arm of the Israeli government.
It preys upon like this liberal need for like everyone's got to get along. You know, if we can just come to the table and you know, break bread, it'll all be fine. You know, they're preying off these like liberal empty emotions of like joy and that kind of stuff.
Vibes.
Right. Where it frustrates me because it's like it's just that you don't understand how this conflict has been working, you know?
Right.
So, but it's they have to appear, you know, to have some ethics, like, so it's somewhat more disgusting to me. Not that KAMALA isn't equally as controlled by AIPAC, but she has to have a public position, you know?
Right. And it kind of makes sense given the party, the Democratic Party as a institution, like the idea how typically they always kind of toe the line on things. It's like, and again, I say toe the line in terms of what their donors want them to do, but giving the illusion that they actually give a shit about what the people want, and kind of playing that faux progressiveness.
Well, me and you have called out that ceasefire like language the minute it came out. We were like, they're going to use that shit to like, and also, you know, we've talked about how they're going to just blame it on figureheads. We've talked about how there's a lot of narrative management over this, to where they really just want to continue what they're doing and they're willing to run out the clock on everyone. So I also, you know, we've heard recently a lot of people when it comes to like, you know, for Jill Stein to use her votes as leverage to Kamala to get a ceasefire.
If she gets a ceasefire, which, and I said this to you, but to quote our patron saint Kwame Ture,
right?
Like to go into it, and I'm going to paraphrase what he said. The idea of, you know, making amends with you, essentially your enemy, is essentially thinking that they have a conscience, and they don't.
Yeah.
So to me, and like that's where Nora Ericott, who was a potential VP pick for the Greens, went wrong, which I was really surprised with, because she was making that same case of, oh, like if we get a ceasefire, then we can tell the Democratic Party that
we'll
we will
back
vote for
you,
Kamala.
right?
And the
Who's
Greens
to say
get credit for,
they
like,
don't just give them a
you.
ceasefire for that exact purpose, and then the minute she's in office, they go back to doing what they're doing.
Right.
Like, what's stopping that?
Right.
So,
but the other thing that I was thinking of today was, because so many people, like our colleagues in the space, have basically reported pretty much every day.
Yeah.
But Kamala still doesn't have any policies listed on her website. She has merch. So you can buy merch, but you don't know as of now, like, what she stands for as far as policy. And I forgot who said this today that I was watching or listening to. And they made a great point in terms of, she, and I would argue the Democratic Party, have to essentially wait, quote unquote, to hear what their donors want.
Yeah.
And then somehow make the spin. And this is how we get the crumbs that we get, because they know generally what the Democratic base wants. I would argue the Democratic base, like, not talking about them, talking about people like us who are generally, even if they're probably more liberal in thinking, generally want more progressive policy more often than not. But especially in this case, and I think the statistic I saw is 8 in 10 people are for an arms embargo to Israel.
Yeah.
So
on both sides of the aisle,
the
pretty sure.
Of, right, the donors, J Street, basically want the idea, you know, like Israel to fight right to defend itself, ergo sending more weapons. But also they need to make the case of, oh, we can't totally seemingly be against what the people want. So what's the middle ground, or what's the compromise here? And I think the compromise, as you said, is the language of ceasefire or a two-state solution, which, also thinking about this, has any Palestinian, to your knowledge, and maybe this could be worth looking into more, and like,
I know some.
Do Palestinians want a two-state solution?
No, unless they're in bed with Israel. That's about it.
Right. And honestly, I feel like that's a well worth conversation with someone who
there's
is
an article
Palestinian, to ask them,
there's an article in Mint Press about, like, Palestinian people that are, like, in bed with Israel for propaganda purposes, that talk about stuff like that. So we could look into that and do that.
I know that, but like people, like actual Palestinians on the ground who are not connected to a party at all. And I think, again, as I said, I think this is a worthwhile, if we're able to interview someone, to ask them this question, like, what is your feeling about a two-state solution that Kamala and the Democratic Party have been pushing, and what are you for? Like, I think
you'd get some answers saying, like, that's probably all we can get, right? Like, that might be some of the responses. Like, if that ends the suffering right now, they'll take it.
Right. But again, and you know me, you know, like, what's the grand prize? Like, what is the vision, you know, for Palestine? And if we're talking about liberation for Palestine, what does that look like? What does that mean to them? Like, I don't want to hear from the party, like, what they believe in this case the solution is, because obviously the solution is, you know, like, bombing the shit out of Gaza and now the West Bank, and then let the chips fall where they may, but in the guise of, I don't know, I actually don't know, but all we know is essentially bomb it. Whereas a Palestinian might have a different view as to what their liberation would look like. So I think that's a worthwhile discussion / conversation that should be had more.
Yeah.
And again, no Palestinians that are connected to the party or politics at all in that way, but rather just regular people on the ground who are educated and know the situation, who actually do have solutions into what that liberation for themselves looks like. That is what we should be asking and talking about, not hearing from politicians as far as what the solution, quote unquote, is, which actually isn't a solution at all. But to me, as I said, a two-state solution is basically a Palestinian version of Jim Crow, like separate but equal.
Right.
So it should be ideal. Well, I think it was Sabby that brought up this point, whereas like for Black people, like we in this country, we don't have Jim Crow anymore, but are Black people really liberated? You can make the argument no. So there's obviously some work to do. So even with the idea of a secular state where Israelis and Palestinians are quote unquote living together, like even with that, it's just kind of like, what will that look like?
What was
like,
that
will
Tory
they go
quote?
through the similar issues in terms of what Black people go through in this country, even now?
You can have peace without liberation. Does that make it, like I forget that whole back and forth he has with someone, but yeah, man, I mean, clearly the solution for Israel is the final one. That sounds like what they're going with. So I don't know. I think it's going to require again foreign intervention, which, hopefully comes soon, in my opinion. But yeah.
But anyway, let us know what you guys think. Again, as I said, J Street is probably more dangerous than APAC probably is.
Yeah.
But tell us what you think. And what do you like? Has this made you think differently in terms of the Israeli lobby? And obviously, like APAC is definitely a major player in what's happening related to Gaza right now. But either way, share your thoughts in the chat or in the comments if you're watching the clip of this. And if you want to support us, please feel free to scan the QR code that you see on your screen, or go to the link at your bottom of your screen where you can donate to the network. If you're in chat, you can type !donate, and the link will appear if you also want to donate that way. YouTube basically said we are not promoting or pushing anything that you guys do. So the only way that we're able to continue to grow is through you guys, through sharing our content, subbing to us, and following us on Twitter. And don't forget to like and subscribe to us to fight the suppression that we are experiencing on YouTube. And be sure to leave a comment. We do read them. Some of them, especially if you have ideas for stories, we would love to hear because like a lot of these stories are so freaking depressing.
Yeah.
And help us get to free K. So thank you, and thanks for watching.
Yeah. All right. So before we get to that, let's go to Rockfin and Rumble. Let's grab the links to those two and put them in chat while I'm thinking about it. Let's grab Rumble, share, and copy. Cool. Again, I also have Shanda's GoFundMe pinned and our top comment. So please go up there to the top of the chat and help that out if you can. There's Rumble. Oh, hold on. Rumble. There we go. Cool. You can go to alternate platforms by clicking the links in the description or the ones I just left in chat. Animaires left us $5 whole on the rock fin. Said, just found out my black Persian likes rye bread. Pretty sure he's the first. So she also says, two-state solution is the equivalent of murdering American indigenous peoples. Yeah, I mean, yep.
Yes.
You know.
Yes.
So, and Trail of Tears, sanctioning them to small areas of land, all that stuff. Yes. The parallels between those two are almost direct. So,
yes.
You know, besides,
all kind of based on the idea of religion equals land ownership.
Manifest Destiny.
Right, which makes absolutely no damn sense. Like
they would never use something like polio blankets. That would never. Wait, what? What? That would never happen. So anyway, there is people on the Rumbles. Kate Inhe says, "Ugh!" exclamation point. I agree. I don't know what you're ugging, but I agree with it. So appreciate you. If you're on Rumble, use those opposable thumbs. Get in the chat. Let us know you're not a lizard person. Always appreciated. Anything in the YouTube chats?
Yes. So a dingo ate my baby. Said J Street setting the left side and APAC setting the right side of allowable discourse.
Yep.
Well, I wouldn't say J Street is left.
No, it's
like
but
I would argue
they try to appear
like
as right
center right, which is the Democrat Party.
Yeah, welcome to the Overton window.
They're
Yeah,
not left.
Yeah,
they're not left at all. But the idea of what is allowed, I think they're definitely more liberal, and I would argue liberal in our current discourse is more center right, if anything else, right now.
Yeah.
Where it's kind of the acceptable talking points that kind of we don't want to piss off the people that we want to that we can't afford to piss off. But at the same time, we're going to do what the donors tell us to do.
Yeah.
And not necessarily do what the people want, which I argue generally is more of the populist / left leaning side of that more often than not. So yeah, J Street is not left. But yes, like I think they are dictating what the discourse is, or at least the most acceptable one, which you can kind of hear when what KAMALA is trying to spout off over and over again in the issue, like trying to both sides the issue instead of actually declaring what should be done in this situation, which will actually be the right thing to do.
Yep. I see Oz saying hi to people in chat.
I love Oz.
You know, let you know, let Oz know you love him. Always appreciated. But anyway, let's get to our next story. So, article by Ramsey Baroud. We're gonna talk about some reasons why Israel has been doing the kinds of torture it's been doing. Just as a trigger warning, we're probably going to be talking about this 4-letter R word that includes a particular kind of violence that some of you might be a little sensitive to.
You can say SA.
Yes, yeah, we will be talking about that word as well.
So if you say SA, you know that it means
yes.
the
I
R word.
I will probably be using the real words because I hate censorship like that. But you know, just come back in 15, 30 minutes, or don't watch this clip if this kind of stuff triggers you. It has less of the talk about that than you would think, so you might be okay. But I just wanted to warn people before we went into it. But
you said I didn't look at this yet, but you said that it wasn't as
crazy
as what
it's mainly everything around it. Yeah. So the title of, now that we've given those trigger warnings, why Israel soldiers rape. So we're going to get into it. Mint Press News, Ramsey Baroud. So on October 25th, Israeli politician Moshe Feiglin told Arutz Sheva Israel National News that Muslims are not afraid of us anymore. Keep that in mind. So it might sound odd that Feiglin saw the element of fear as critical to Israel's well-being, if not its very survival. In actuality, the fear element is directly linked to Israel's behavior and fundamental to its political discourse. Historically, Israel has carried out massacres with a specific political strategy in mind, to instill the desired fear to drive Palestinians off their land. Deir Yassin, Tantara, and the over 70 documented massacres during the Palestinian Nakba of catastrophe are cases in point. Israel has also utilized torture, rape, and other forms of sexual assault to achieve similar ends in the past, to exact information, or to break down the will of prisoners. UN-affiliated experts said in a report published on August 5th that these practices are intended to punish Palestinians for resisting occupation and seek to destroy them individually and collectively. Israel's ongoing war in Gaza has manifested all these horrific strategies in ways unprecedented in the past, both in terms of widespread application and frequency. In a report entitled Welcome to Hell, published on August 5th, the Israeli rights group B'Tselem said that Israel's detention facilities, in which every inmate is deliberately subjected to harsh, relentless pain and suffering, operated as de facto torture camps. A few days later, the Palestinian rights group Adamir published its report, documented cases of torture, sexual violence, and degrading treatment, along with the systemic abuses and human rights violations committed against detainees from Gaza. You wonder why the Israeli sources are putting out these videos and information, right? It's because they want to instill the fear. They want you to hate them.
Right.
Like, that's the point. So, in incidents of rape, sexual assault, and other forms of torture are marked on a map. They would cover a large geographical area. In Gaza, in the West Bank, in Israel itself, mostly notably in the notorious Sid Timon camp. We've covered Israel's Gitmo. Feel free to go check that link out. So, considering the size and location of the Israeli army, well-documented evidence of rape and torture demonstrates that such tactics are not linked to a specific branch of the military. This means that the Israeli army uses torture as a centralized strategy. Keep in mind when KAMALA talks about sexual violence, when in regards to October 7th, no mention of this, right? So...
No one in our government really mentions that.
No.
Right. As I said in the last segment, it's the idea of like she talks about Hamas and the torture and the da, and it's like receipts. Where are the receipts? We have plenty of receipts online in terms of what the IDF has been doing.
Yeah,
but they don't share that shit.
No. So, such a strategy has been associated with the likes of Itamar Ben-Gvir, Israel's national security minister. The aggressive statements, for example, that Palestinian prisoners should be, quote, shot in the head instead of being given more food, are perfectly aligned with his equally violent actions, the starvation policy of prisoners, the normalization of torture, and the defense of rape. But Ben-Gvir did not institute these torturous policies. They have predated him by decades and were used against generations of Palestinian prisoners who were granted few rights compared to those enshrined by international law, particularly the Forced Geneva Convention. This paragraph, please keep in mind that getting rid of the leadership in Israel right now will not solve the problems.
Solve the problem.
At all. So... why does Israeli
baked in the culture, folks?
Torture Palestinians on such a large scale? Right. It's they teach their children this. It's part of the culture there. So Israeli wars against Palestinians are predicted on two elements, a material and psychological one. The former has manifested itself in the ongoing genocide, the killing and wounding of tens of thousands, and the near destruction of Gaza. The psychological factor, however, is intended to break the will of the Palestinian people. Law for Palestine, a legal advocacy group, published a database of over 500 instances of Israeli leaders, including Prime Minister Netanyahu, inciting genocide in Gaza. Also, this fear factor stuff, I don't know if you've heard stories of them playing pornography to Palestinian people over there, like, television, like cable, right? Being the first, these are massively religious Muslim people who don't do that sort of thing, and Israel doesn't have that same problem.
Oh,
so,
okay, yeah,
right.
Okay. I was like, "What are you talking about?" But now I get it.
Yeah, so they do that deliberately as psychological warfare, right? It's been multiple instances of that. It's why you see them put up TikToks of stuff of Israeli people in women's clothing, particularly Palestinian women's clothing, all that stuff. This is all part of that warfare, right? So most of the references seem to be centered on dehumanizing the Palestinians. For example, the October 11th statement by President Yitzhak Herzog that there are no innocents in Gaza, right, was part of the collective death sentence that made the extermination of Palestinians morally justifiable in the eyes of Israelis. Netanyahu's own ominous biblical reference, where he called on Israeli soldiers to seek revenge from Palestinians, stating, "Remember what Amalek has done to you," was also a blank check for mass murder, right? We talked about this in regards to the ICC ruling, right? So, while choosing not to see Palestinians as human, as innocent, as worthy of life and security, Israel has granted its army carte blanche to do as it sees saw fit in the words of Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, human animals, right? They have been called rats and cockroaches and just about everything under the sun. So, the mass killing, starvation, and widespread rape and torture of Palestinians are a natural outcome of these shocking dialectics. But the overall purpose of Israel is not simply to exact revenge, though the latter has been quite crucial to Israel's desire for national recovery. By trying to break the will of Palestinians through torture, humiliation, and rape, Israel wants to restore a different kind of deterrence which it lost on October 7th. Failing to restore military or strategic deterrence, Tel Aviv is invested in psychological deterrence, as in restoring the element of fear that was breached on October 7th. Raping prisoners, leaking videos of the gruesome acts, and carrying out the same horrific deed again and again are all part of the Israeli strategy, that of restoring fear. But Israel will fail simply because Palestinians have already succeeded in demolishing Israel's 76-year matrix of physical domination and mental torture. The Israeli war on Gaza has proven to be the most destructive and bloody of all Israeli wars, yet Palestinian resilience continues to grow stronger because Palestinians are not passive but active participants in the shaping of their own future. If popular resistance is indeed the process of the restoration of the self, Palestinians of Gaza are proving that, despite their unspeakable pain and agony, they are emerging as a whole, ready to clinch their freedom, no matter the cost. Collin, thoughts? What do you got?
I mean, it's interesting. It's not to say I haven't thought of this as a psychological war tactic.
Yes.
But it makes sense to me given what slave owners did to Black people back in the day. It's the same. It's basically this exact same shit.
Yeah.
No, but the only thing is that it's the idea of like, it's not that Palestinians fear Israelis. It's the idea that Israelis fear Palestinians.
Yes, it's why they talk about stealing their women and raping them, and it's why they talk about
like
the same thing they did to your people. Same thing.
Yeah. So it's like, because, and even now, it's like the idea of like Black men, me.
Yes.
It's like somebody that should be feared in society. I don't see why. Look at me. I'm like, but whatever. But that's the kind of common trope that we see, in media in terms of Black men. So it definitely makes sense as far as.
Meanwhile, it was the slave owners raping women and, that was what was happening. So
Right. But it was the idea of like, we want to make an example out of you so that you essentially will be so broken that you will not be able to resist. And that way we have hold
Yeah.
of you, which really, if you think about it in terms since October 7th, and I think, you know, it's not working. Because if anything, you've radicalized not just the Palestinians, but basically the entire world to the Palestinian cause. In terms of now, like, you have people all over the world who are sympathetic more so, if that probably ever before in probably history, of the Palestinian struggle and their means for liberation. And so I think they've, instead of like actually being like, oh, we can't do this anymore, they're essentially tripling down and going harder. I mean, we've seen this obviously with Netanyahu, but in a lot of ways, our government is also kind of complicit in that too. So we are also kind of feeding the fear. But then for Israelis to think that that Palestinians are people to be feared that have to be exterminated. And as I said in the last segment, it's based around the idea of like, Israel needs land as a means to feel safe, which I'm kind of like, I would argue that a Jewish person, and I'm saying Jewish in this case, but like a Jewish person at this time in this country living relatively is safer than an Israeli living in Tel Aviv, right?
Yeah.
And like, but that is the Zion that the heaven that you're trying on her earth that you guys are trying to create for yourselves in the name of what you say is a religious right to a land that you say was promised to you. Now, by that tactic, you can make the argument that, like, when I was a Christian, you can also make the argument too, well, essentially that kind of promise, you know, I should also have a claim to Israel too as a Christian.
Right.
So does that give me the right as a Christian to go over and torture the indigenous community who have lived on that land for centuries? No. So it's just kind of the what's the word? The like Jesus, I just lost my train of thought. But like but no, it's the but you know, it's just the idea that Israelis have this idea that this is what's owed to us, and so as a result, we have to exterminate these people. Which I'm kind of like, if a religion, quote unquote, and it's not. So let's make that very clear. Like, no religion really, in its purest form, would cause people to exterminate other people, like in the truest sense. Like, well,
been a couple of instances of that.
I'm saying holistically. I'm saying holistically, like the way that we've kind of interpreted it as human beings, we kind of fucked that up. And you know, especially with the Abrahamic religions, you know, Islam.
Depends on what part of the book you're reading.
Right.
You know.
But like
go ask about the Canaanites and see how God felt about them, you know?
Right. Like even if you are Jewish, the idea of, you know, being set apart as far as being a Jew was to be a light and an example to other people that will draw you, that people will be drawn to them based on.
Yeah. I mean, Jewish Forces for Peace definitely going to be talking about how their religion doesn't mean any of that.
Not because, oh, we have this land that was promised to us from thousands of years ago. So it's the idea of relationship, and at least in my mind, it's the idea of how you're able to connect with people and within the context of your faith, and how that draws people in
Well,
terms of the connections that you're making with people versus.
I mean, I don't know why you would follow anyone that was lost in the desert for however long they were. I would argue you might wonder if someone should ask for directions, but you know, what do I know? Yeah, I mean, it's just, I wanted to bring the story because I think it's important to talk about the psychological warfare of this, you know, where that we've seen a lot of that, and people always kind of wonder, well, why would they put that stuff out? And, you know, why would they be doing that? And it's psychological warfare. They want to put them back in their place, pretty much. And to me, it's the literal, it's living heads on spikes, right? You know, like what better way to show that you are the biggest and baddest by putting out your victims to talk about how big and bad you are, you know? So I think it's part of that too. But talking about these things is definitely why we're demonetized. So you can scan that QR code on your screen. You can go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork, or you can put !donate in the live chat and, you know, leave us a couple dollary dues. Help us, you know, continue to do what we're doing. If you can't give monetarily, we get it. Just like and subscribe and share this video. Share this stream. Help fight the suppression. Try to get us some more followers. Always appreciated. Leaving comments, doing that kind of engagement supposedly helps. So do all those things. You know, we're trying to get to 3K subs. We're getting there. We're moving pretty good. So, you know, appreciate any support you can give. Otherwise, thanks for watching. All right. Let's go to the chats, Care Bear. I will leave Rockbin and Rumble in the chats for people. It is always at our Linktree at indienews.network. If you want to go sub to those channels, you might find that, you know, YouTube might not be available one of these days. So please go there and follow us on those platforms. Anna Mayer's holding it down on the Rockfin. But she's Anna. I didn't mean that $5 was little, Anna. Whole $5 is a lot for people right now. I get it. So, and I'd rather people be given to Shanda this week anyway. So please go do that. I have pinned the GoFundMe for Shanda in the chats. So if you haven't given to her, please do that before giving to us this week. She needs it more than we do right now. So appreciate all the help going there. So anyway, anyone over on the Rumble? Ellen DeBewer says hi everyone over on Rumble. Anything in the YouTube chat, Care Bear?
Yes. Global Solidarity said Israel was created and continues to be an economic success since birth. Profit keeps the continuation of Balfour Declaration 1917, which we've talked about, and I agree. We talked about the Balfour Declaration in depth, so you can check on our channel page for that segment. But yeah, I think we've even mentioned this with James Baldwin sometime over the summer, where he essentially said the idea of Israel is to protect the interests of the Western world. So essentially paraphrasing what he said. So yes, that's why there is such a love for Israel. It's not, I would argue, not so much even because of its religious affiliation, but more of the economical ones, especially in that region, that are of great interest to us in the West. So you're right.
Yep. What else you got? Heidi Benner says such projection from Israeli losers. Luckily, the world is against all of them. It is helpful, I feel like. I feel like there is a unified front at the minute against that. At least from the public, you know? So, anything
That's
else?
all I see in relation to So
Cool.
I saw in relation to the story.
Well, you ready for our next one?
Yep. And this is a longer one. But as I said earlier, we're back in school. I'm back at work in full swing. So at least right now, I'm a lot more tired than, I was like a month or so ago, but I'll get used to it. But I'm back at work, back at school, and our college students are now officially back in classes for the fall semester. And administrators have been busy over the summer in trying to crack down on what they realized was actually going to be a continuation of the protests that were happening on many college campuses throughout the country back in the spring. So if you are a college student, you probably should take note that some of the ways that your administration is working against you in terms of your right to protest, and especially given what is happening in Gaza. So this might be an article / segment that you should take some great interest in if you are a college or grad student and you're looking to support Palestine in as far as protesting or whatever. This might be helpful in kind of determining what your administration essentially was planning for you over the summer while you were on break. So this article is from SheerPost, written by Carrie Sameba, who writes, U.S. universities spent their summer strategizing to suppress student activism. Here is their plan. So let's find out what their plan is, shall we? University administrators across the United States have declared an indefinite state of emergency on college campuses. Schools are rolling out policies in preparation for quashing pro-Palestine student activism this fall semester and reshaping regulations and even campuses in the process to suit this new normal.
Which we talked a bit about last week.
Yes.
So
yes. Many of these policies being instituted share a common formula: more militarization, more law enforcement, more criminalization, and more consolidation of institutional power. But where do these policies originate, and why are they so similar across all campuses? The answer lies in the fact that they've been provided by the risk and crisis management consulting industries with the tactic support of trustees, Zionist advocacy groups, and federal agencies. Together, they employ the language of safety to disguise a deeper logic of control and securitization. Schools used this past summer to hear from consultants and prepare the crackdown with no time to waste. As the assistant director of campus safety at Oberlin College reminded participants on the recent webinar, navigating campus controversy challenges of managing protests and critical events, if your students are gone now, this is a good time to tighten up your policies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Run by ex-military law enforcement and campus public safety officials, the risk and crisis management consulting industry constitutes a critical node of a larger repression network of state actors, partisan off-campus groups, and the Zionist lobby, who collectively work to criminalize student political dissent. Risk management involves financial and non-financial risks, everything from regulatory compliance to campus safety. Institutional investors, driven by mandates for safe, predictable returns, encourage universities to adopt stringent risk management frameworks that prioritize financial stability and institutional reputation over intellectual integrity. So, money.
Yeah.
Protect our money. That's what they're saying. So,
well, as the Wu-Tang put it, cash rules everything around me. Gotta get the money.
Right. In the era of the student intifada, pro-Palestinian student activism is regarded by stakeholders as posing risks severe enough to justify policies that reconfigure the boundaries of permissible expression. Oh, we can't have that.
Someone might accidentally get poked in the eye with a flag or something, who knows?
God forbid we actually make us do something financially that we do not want to necessarily
Because that's like all students have been asking for in this case, really, is to divest from Israeli money. And they're like, yeah,
Right.
but it's money, but it's good money. You know,
This summer, the risk and crisis management consulting industries hosted several convenings directly focused on the student protests. In July, over 450 campus protection professionals convened in Atlanta for the 11th annual Campus Safety Conference. Of course, it's going to be in Atlanta.
Yeah. Well, that's Cop City. That's where they're training
that's
this
why I'm saying,
at.
of course, it's in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Cop City. That's
What was the
why.
other? Wasn't the one in? What was the other Cop City?
Baltimore.
Right? Didn't they have like
Baltimore.
a college campus set that they were building
Yes.
on that and doing
Yes.
Reef and an urban
Yes.
environment? You know?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I remember.
Yes.
Oh.
Since the current unrest is extremely challenging to navigate and will likely continue into the 2024-25 academic year, this year's conference will solely cover protest successes and challenges. The conference advisory board consists of current and former law enforcement like Bobby Brasher, whose biography boasts that he has spent time in Israel
Yep.
observing Israeli strategies and tactics.
Yeah. Like, yep.
It's a circle of life.
It's just, you know,
Goes back to Israel.
he knows exactly how to wash
something.
blood-washed money. You know, like that's, you can get blood right out of those dollar bills. Don't worry about it. You know, Jesus Christ.
Highlights from this year's conference included surveillance technology product demonstrations, which I think you're going to talk about.
We're going to talk about later, yeah.
Table talk exercises at a session titled Armed Staff, Security Enhancement or Liability?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
The Blue Moon Consulting Group is another firm that serves dozens of universities and colleges. It recently hosted its own campus unrest-themed crisis leadership retreat in Breckenridge, Colorado.
What? Crisis leadership retreat. Okay.
Where participants receive training in media relations and protest management policy and planning. Such gatherings evoke a cross between a corporate PR workshop and a weapons
Expo.
Showcasing the latest security gadgets while offering polished media strategies for handling campus protests. So I can imagine this could be more like robotic dogs.
Robotic. Lots of
Potentially on
things.
campus, or those drones that you showed me.
Yup. Drone security, robot security.
Right.
Also, you know, just general social media, like web crawlers. That could be a lot of stuff, bro. You know, VR training for, you know, campus mall cops. Could be any number of things. You know, new tasers, sound cannons, water jets. Just lots of tools of oppression.
Right.
Um,
This coordinated crackdown is further exemplified by the Hillel Foundation and Security Community Network's recent launch of Operation Secure Our Campuses, a security campaign targeting over 50 campuses. This summer, the SCN co-hosted a roundtable discussion with the Major Cities Chiefs Association featuring public safety officials from 92 universities and representatives from the FBI, Law Enforcement Association leaders, and Jewish security professionals. The discussion produced 10 security recommendations, such as banning encampments, implementing emergency plans, and deepening collaboration with law enforcement, all of which have rapidly been enacted across the country in recent weeks.
yeah.
These gatherings help explain the uniformity of EU policies recently announced on campuses across the US, from liberal arts schools like Pomona College to large public university systems like the California State University System.
Cal State.
Administrations have imposed a spate of anti-protesting guidelines in the lead up to the fall semester. Bans on encampments, temporary structures, amplified sound, chalking, freestanding signs, flowering, outdoor displays, and event tables are among the measures introduced to curtail political expression. These sweeping measures close existing loopholes and preemptively stifle spontaneous and organized political activity. The University of South Florida's revised activities, signage, and use of public space policy illustrates this move, asserting that the university reserves the right to determine how to apply and interpret all time, place, and manner limitations on activities.
Yeah.
So censorship.
Yep. Essentially, you better do what we tell you. That's what that is. You know.
Nearly all recent university policy updates have intensified the bureaucratic hurdles for student organizations to gain approval to host an event. Some have gone further to capture control of campus activities. Carnegie Mellon University's updated expressive activity registration policy stipulates that all events involving quote-unquote expressive activity,
like interpretive dance,
that deviate from the freedom of expression policy will be considered unregistered. In such cases, the administration will decide whether it is in the best interest of campus safety, security, and operations to prevent or disband the event or not, and whether those involved in providing leadership for organizing and executing such unregistered event should be subject to conduct review. Centralizing control through subjective interpretations of expressive activity ensures that Greek life events may proceed with minimal scrutiny, while groups like Students for Justice in Palestine face administrative and disciplinary harassment.
That's because the Greeks make the college monies.
Right.
Exactly. Like, this is also what will be interesting is to, going forward, see what protest colleges will allow and what they won't allow. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, who's to say that Ukrainian or Israeli protests will still happen? Like, that's going to be the thing. So, and which ones they crack down heavily on. That's going to be the, and you won't even notice it barely unless you're paying attention, which we will be. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see how that works. Like, which performative measures will be allowed as well, you know? So, it'll be interesting.
Universities have metaphorically crafted policies to enshrine the privileged status of students who align with their political and material interests.
Like we were saying,
New York University's updated guidance and expectations on student conduct codifies the conflation of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism into the school's non-discrimination and anti-harassment policy and procedures for students. This update transforms Zionism into a Title VI protected class on NYU's campus, where speech and conduct that would violate the NDAH if targeting Jewish or Israeli people can also violate the NDAH if directed towards Zionists. NYU's Faculty for Justice in Palestine chapter warns that the new guidance implies that any nationalist political ideology, Hindu nationalism, Christian nationalism, etc., that is integrated into some members of that group's understanding of their own racial or ethnic identity should be entitled to civic rights protections, a precedent that further entrenches the administration's role in policing political discourse. The shift not only reinforces administrative control over campus politics, but also insinuates its policies from challenge by equating dissent with harassment. The University of California, which allocated $29 million to counter the student intifada in the spring, announced a ban on masking to conceal identity and a directive requiring individuals to reveal their identity when asked. As new COVID-19 variants sweep California,
and monkeypox and all that stuff,
as key to achieving the delicate but essential balance between free speech rights and the need to protect the safety of our community. However, this notion of safety devoid of public health considerations endangers the entire community, granting campus police broad discretion to selectively legitimize norms of compliance. These new restrictions will disproportionately impact the immunocompromised, undocumented students, and Black and other over-policed minorities, while simultaneously exposing student organizers to increased risks of doxing, harassment, and surveillance.
Yeah, and it's also do what we say when we told you to say it, and not now when we don't. So,
right.
You know, like it was mandated for a while on college campuses, and now because it's being used against you, you're going, oh, maybe we should not. You know, we're installing facial recognition that doesn't work well with that. So if you could not.
Similarly, the University of Virginia, James Madison University, and Virginia Commonwealth University have implemented mask restrictions in compliance with Virginia Code 18.2-422, which bans any mask, hood, or other garment that conceals the wearer's identity. These measures reflect a broader trend among public universities in states threatening to withhold funding from institutions that fail to contain pro-Palestine student organizing. And there it is.
Yeah.
So, but I've been wondering about this. What if it's a Muslim woman who wears a jihad?
Yeah.
How does this play into that?
Right.
So again, this makes no sense to me. But again, it's just the idea of like, if we see students do this, then we can defund your school.
Yeah.
Which ultimately colleges and universities don't want to.
Right.
So,
well, and that's been a problem on universities forever. I had a buddy in college that was like Sikh, and like part of their religion is the turban.
Turbans.
And like hat coverings weren't allowed on campus or whatever, you know? And it was like, I you know, it's like he also would carry a knife, and like that's religiously things they do that doesn't, you know, bode well for campus policy. So there's some weird rules with all that. So, but yeah, no, that's going to be an issue for them, I'm sure. So,
right. Louisa County, for instance, pulled all of its funding for Piedmont, Virginia Community College in its 2025 adopted budget after the SJP chapter hosted a screening of the documentary film Israelism on campus. Can you zoom out, please?
Yes. Sorry.
Beyond policy solutions, the risk and crisis management consulting industries shape the physical and operational landscape of campuses. Their suggestions often push clients to purchase gear from partners in the burgeoning campus safety market, leading university administration to, in turn, allocate more money to meet the ever-growing costs of managing dissent. To respond to the student intifada, universities have invested in license plate readers and AI classification tools to identify and monitor non-student outsiders, quote unquote. This investment in surveillance technology enhances internal security infrastructure while deepening ties with law enforcement. For example, as reported by CBS New York, the NYPD has worked with dozens of schools to devise protest response plans for the fall, notably a zero-tolerance police policy on encampments. This university-police collaboration spans all scales, from local mutual aid agreements to DHS-backed fusion centers. Such coordination will fuel the increased militarized campus policing emblematic of the post-9/11 era, with over 100 colleges and universities now equipped with military surplus gear through the Department of Defense 1033 program. The integration of SWAT teams and paramilitary gear into campus life, along with its own system of ID checkpoints, embodies the ambitions of war profiteering university trustees who envision higher education as an extension of the U.S. empire. As campus police acquire more advanced technology, U.S. university administrations eagerly funnel resources to accommodate their growing arsenal, perpetuating an arms race within the academic sphere. This professionalization has been accompanied by the rise of campus policing expertise as a distinct field of knowledge production. It is a technocratic pursuit situated within the administrative engine of the neoliberal university, a system of efficiency and control designed to maximize quote-unquote security. Under the guise of neutrality, the label of expertise attached to campus policing conceals its bias alignment with the board's financial interests. So essentially, ACAP, basic. I mean, in a matter simply, yeah, but it's just the idea of like, and again, this is happening under generally liberal universities where they would tend to be more democratic or lean quote unquote left, where we're seeing more militarization of police. So now, like, they militarize like local police. Now they're militarizing campus police too.
Well, and it all points to that, like, you know, that liberal arts.
Our money.
Right, like that's really the bottom line. That if that decorum is upset, the Karens start to Karen, you know.
Right.
So we've all seen those teachers. We all know who I mean, you know. So ones that would otherwise give you lip service to, you know, your like just that they have liberal bona fides, right? Like, you know, but. Yeah, this is about the money, Lebowski. This is
right.
Israel gives us a couple of wings to our colleges, so we need you to not. And the people who give us other wings to the colleges tell us that, you know, we need to get in line
I
here.
won't give you money if people are protesting and like breaking shit.
Well, and the problem with that was that who does that protesting actually affect? It's really not the college, because the college will make money regardless, right? Like if you gave them tuition fees, they got their bag. They don't care if you get learnt after that, right? Who it affects are the parents who want their kids to actually be learning at college, right? And to get the expertise so that they can get a job in a field that they are, you know what I mean? So those are the ones who start calling the college. They're the ones who go, my kid is, you know, having to deal with protesters on campus all day, or, you know, so that's who they're hearing from. They're hearing from the people who write their checks. So, you know, that's the battle. It's the parents versus the funders. And
well, not only parents, but banks, because again, like, you know, a lot of these financial institutions, especially if you have student loans, like that affects the bottom line too, because especially like if this continues, and again, that kind of relates to parents too, like, or students might just leave.
Yeah.
So that affects, so, you know, so financial loan servicers, federal government and private, you know, do not necessarily want that either.
Yeah.
So it's just like, yeah. So again, it's just the money, follow the money. And this is really what this is about. It's the idea of like, and I know Sabby says this all the time, given that she worked in higher ed, colleges run our business. They're not schools. They are a business, and they run as such, and they prioritize their finances over everything else. And especially given right now, like the idea of colleges is that there's new dorms, like there's all these perks, you know, like whatever, to kind of entice young, impressionable minds to be like, ooh, this is a college that I want to go to for the next 4+ years. Like, if that's tainted by the idea of protests, then that's marketing that's being lost to the school. So in order for like students to want to go, like either pull them out because they feel unsafe, or the idea of like students who might be sympathetic to the Palestinian cause, who are kind of seeing the protests and making putting two together, would be like, I don't want to go to that college.
Well,
because
now
of what they stand for in terms of Israel.
All you have to do to fight this is essentially cost them more money than they're earning from that country. That's the fight now. Is
Right.
all you have to do is tell them, look, divest, don't take money from that country in any capacity, and you got no problems with us. But until then, we're going to hurt your pocketbook by at least this amount. So,
right.
You know, make their wallets choose. Very easy decision if that's the problem. So,
right. And it's funny how, like, you know, how colleges are just willing to just give money away towards police enforcement and toys in order to crack down on students who happen to protest.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but they cannot give scholarships to students who actually might need to in order to go to college.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just kind of priorities are just really fucked up. But regardless, against this backdrop, the intensified online surveillance of student activism illuminates the digital underbelly of militarized repression. In July, the University of California Police Department, recipient of 1.3 million of diverted DEI funding redesignated after last year's protests, obtained a search warrant to seize Instagram data from the UNCJ SJP Instagram account, such as names, addresses, phone numbers, credit card information, connection logs, direct messages, and location. This follows a $73,500 annual contract signed in 2016 between the UNC Police Department and Social Sentinel social media monitoring. Meanwhile, the Orange County Police Attorney's Office continues to pursue criminal charges against community members and students for their participation in the Triangle Gaza Solidarity encampment. UNC SJP remains under suspension on an interim basis while the student conduct processes considered allegations of violations of university policies, according to school officials. Oops.
There you go.
Long before the student intifada, both private and public universities sought to eliminate Students for Justice in Palestine from their campuses. Last year, George Washington University and Rutgers University suspended their SJP chapters after the fall semester under the pretext of restoring order on campus. Both universities have again targeted SJP. George Washington's SJP is suspended through the fall, while Rutgers SJP will remain suspended until next summer. Alongside SJP, GWU further suspended Jewish Voice for Peace and 6 other student organizations, including those that provide essential cultural and religious services, such as the Muslim, Arab, and Asian American Student Association. Jesus, like
that's because China, Taiwan, China. Can't be pro-China right now. That's
right.
That's the other problem. So
right. In a statement condemning university anti-protesting policies, the American Association of University Professors denounced the introduction of these top-down edicts that bypass the central role of elected faculty bodies, such as faculty senates in university governments. The AAUP notes that these policies will particularly affect contingent and full-time non-tenure track faculty members and graduate student employees, especially people of color in these groups. In another case of administrative overreach, the University of Pennsylvania provided the House of Representatives Committee on Education and the Workforce with Professor Huda J. Akredline.
Fakhreddine. Sorry, dude, butchered that name. I'm sure.
Yeah, sorry.
It's all right.
And Dr. Amalda's CVs, syllabi from the fall 2022 semester onward, all course-wide communications since the fall 2023 semester, and any communications related to the Gaza Solidarity Encampment, Faculty for Justice in Palestine, or the Palestine Rights Festival since August 1st, 2023. While the university agreed to provide their CVs and syllabi and place holds on both professors' university email accounts, despite not being legally obligated to do so, it remains unclear how much additional information it will share with the committee. This escalating authoritarian oversight similarly manifests in recent developments to curtail student decision-making power. This summer, the UNC system announced its plan to reorganize its honor court after over 100 years, moving from a student-led to a faculty-led model. Screenshots of a UNC Board of Trustees group chat obtained via public records request reveal the underlying motivation for the shift, with one trustee commenting that disciplinary decisions should be adjuncted either within the criminal courts or via the provost, not within the honor court. The recavation of long-standing student decision-making bodies like UNC's honor court may signal an emerging trend. As students and faculty pursued their divestment demands, universities might gradually attempt to dismantle shared governance structures to maintain absolute top-down authority.
Yeah, which will be happening.
Right. Last week, in a decisive 16-1 vote, the New School University Student Senate suspended all funding to registered student organizations until the university meets SJP's divestment demands. To retaliate, the administration seized $400,000 of student funds and announced that they would now unilaterally control the management of these funds without the input of elected student representatives. Jesus
which is
Christ.
Nice of them.
University administrators are acutely aware that the student body sides with liberation. Yeah. Student referendums have historically served as a useful tactic in the long-term campaign to enact BDS on campus. In the 2023-24 school year, for example, divestment referendums passed at Clark, Bowdoin, UMass Amherst, and numerous other campuses. Confronted with these results, university presidents frequently overturn student-led divestment referendums, as demonstrated recently by the University of Pennsylvania and Cornell, where presidents rejected BDS ballot outcomes despite them passing with a majority. So vetoing.
Yeah.
Some administrations go so far as to cancel the referendum altogether, as was the case at Vanderbilt and the University of Michigan last school year. Students' overwhelming support of BDS follows at the level of student government. Last school year, every UC undergrad campus student government, except UC Berkeley, adopted student funding divestment resolutions. The consequences of new university anti-protest policies have already unfolded at the University of Michigan. On August 28th, police violently intervened to thwart a die-in on the diag organized by the school's divestment coalition.
Yeah.
The aftermath left 2 individuals hospitalized and 4 arrested, including a 16-year-old. As the academic year progresses, these episodes of state violence will undoubtedly become the norm rather than the exception.
Yep.
When Zionists trained law enforcement officers descend onto campus quadrangles to perform spectacles of administrative accountability to the Board of Trustees, the imperial boomerang returns, binding the brutality of overseas and domestic settler security states.
Remind people of any historical events? No? Nothing in Ohio? No, just me? Kent State? No? Okay.
I mean, we knew this was going to happen, but it's still the idea of like,
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
well, America equaling militarizing police.
Yeah.
Collaborating with the Israel lobby and donors to crack down on anyone who shows dissent.
Yeah.
And as you kind of talked about in your last segment, basically developing a system of fear, where, psychologically, trying to force college students to basically be like, shut up, or we essentially can ruin you as far as your career and otherwise.
You only have the right to assemble over what we say you can assemble to. That's
right.
That's literally what this is about. So
right. But
you know,
as you said, like Greek life and with the issues of Greek life will probably, be fine. Like any pro-Israel / Ukraine
as a person,
protests, if there will be any, will probably
30
be
minutes.
fine.
30 minutes from Florida State, who had direct problems with death among their Greek life, right? Like, I think the few Palestinian protests that will happen shouldn't be a problem for them. They should be worried about other stuff. But
it's interesting how this is kind of trickling down to not just it's the idea of pro-Palestinian protests per se, but basically any clubs that associate with people of color in general. Like,
don't associate with any people we deem a foreign enemy, like China or Russia or whatever. Those are also, those will also be part of that. Africa, plenty of those will be a problem.
Right. So, the Israeli lobby has basically said, that, young black people are dangerous in terms of, their cause, regarding Israel, because generally, especially given our tradition, like we know oppression. They're probably better than anyone else. And we're able to make those associations fairly easily to what's happening in Palestine. And we would generally stand up against that. And I think, especially within the context of college, especially so. So yeah, this is not so. It's just the idea of basically trickling down or hammering down on pretty much almost everybody on campus, except if you're white, more or less, like essentially.
Yeah.
So, which it'll be interesting to see how students, protest if they do, moving forward. But at the end of the day, like, obviously, just my little sermon is for students who may be watching this and, kind of seeing how your college may essentially be fucking you over now. Do whatever you can safely. Obviously, like,
think outside that box.
Right.
Find those loopholes.
Right. I mean, you guys are smart enough.
Put those BAs in a lot of work.
Right.
So
let us know. Somewhat a longer segment, but I think necessary, given what will probably be needed in the next few months and probably after. But let us know in the comments what you think. And is your school, if you're in college or a grad school, like targeting protests in a similar way? Let us know. We'll be interested to hear from you in terms of what anti-protest strategies are being initiated on your college campus. If you're interested in donating to INN, you feel free to scan the QR code or go to the link that you see at the bottom of your screen to donate. If you're in chat right now, you can type ! Donate in order to give. If you don't remember the link, please support us, as YouTube basically hates us and has made it clear to us that they're not going to push any of our material at all. Gee, I wonder why. So the only way that we're able to grow is you by liking and subscribing to the channel. Please share our content to help us fight suppression, and be sure to make a comment that actually does, well, I'm not sure if it helps us any, but at minimum, it helps us know what you're thinking and definitely gives us ideas for stories that we can report on. So please let us know in the comments or share your thoughts in there, and help us get to 3K. We're growing gradually, but obviously with YouTube not pushing us in the algorithm, it's going to be a longer road in order to get to higher levels. So the way that we've been able to grow is through word of mouth and people sharing and liking our content. So continue doing that, and we appreciate you guys for helping us with that. And thanks for watching.
Cool. Also, speaking of donations, if you're just coming in, I have Shanda's GoFundMe pinned at the top. If you're a fan of the channel, a fan of Beauty and the Boomer, please go, give them some support. They need whatever you can give at the minute. So go check that out. But while I go check Rockfin and Rumble, so But let me look through.
Guess we're having a raid, I guess.
Yeah, from the
Rabbit?
Tin Rabbit people. So
who's Tin Rabbit? What is
people let you know. We've been keeping an eye on them. I think that's like Monarch and them, stuff like that. I think. I don't know. I had to go look. Don't take anything I say as fact on that. I am not the person to ask. You know, Indy's the Rain Man in that regard. So, Kissinger, Denver Attaway, it's the Kissinger strategy of tension of two sides that serve the same de facto government masters. Anyway, anything you got on YouTube?
Fred Edward, I guess, regarding my comment regarding having robot dogs on campus, I guess.
Yeah.
Said, I am not a robot dog or bot, I swear.
Yep. We do have our friendly Nightbot in the chat. He's a nice bot. Don't. Some bots are okay.
Yeah. Kill You Eagles said this was in regards to Shonda's GoFundMe. Healthcare should not be GoFundMe. We agree.
Yep.
We agree.
But yeah.
Really, we shouldn't do GoFundMe for anything, really. It should not exist, honestly.
Yep. And it's got some problems with it specifically, but yep. Not great. But anyway, in just to try to keep us moving with time, I got a couple stories left. Let me undo this. Cool. So last week, Collin, we read a story from Eva Barlett about her time in Gaza, and mentioned then that there was a part 1 to that I figured we'd read this week. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to read Eva's part 1 as our part 2. So we're going to do that. But this is about her time in Gaza, right? In Palestine specifically. So this is from November 2013, right? So wanted to do this because I think it's important to talk about how this wasn't just after October 6th, right? 7th, whichever that day was, right? This has been happening for a minute. So, and as we read this, keep in mind this is actually not now, even though it will seem like it, right? So, but Eva writes, over the years, since May 2007, I have lived in different areas of occupied Palestine, witnessing the crimes of the Zionist entity and sharing in the daily tragedies, injustices, and realities of Palestinian lives. So, in the occupied West Bank in 2007, I volunteered with the ISM for 8 months, during which time I was detained at a protest against a Jewish-only highway in the West Bank, arrested at a roadblock removal action, held handcuffed and shackled for 2 days, and later was finally deported and banned from occupied Palestine, right? So all these blue text here is links. I have Eva's description, her article linked in the description below, so you're welcome to go check that out and follow all those sublinks here. So during those months, I was witness to the ugliest aspects of life under Zionist rule, attacks by illegal Jewish colonists, also armed, and by Zionist soldiers on Palestinian children, women, and elderly, humiliating military checkpoints, some with zoo-like turnstiles, all which served to delay or completely prevent Palestinians' movement, and raids and weeks-long lockdowns on Palestinian towns and cities in which the Zionist army ransacks homes and usually abducts one or more members of the family, including children. There are currently 195 Palestinians children in Zionist prisons. Keep in mind this was when, Collin? No, November of 2013. So in Susia, a hamlet in the South Hebron Hills, I witnessed land being stolen and quickly annexed by illegal Jewish colonists. As we were documenting this annexation, a colonist gleefully admitted that the land was Palestinian, but that the grapevines they'd planted on the land were worth 60,000 shekels, roughly $17,000, and were intended for wine production. It doesn't matter. See, the grapes we go will be wine, and I will drink the wine. It doesn't matter at all that you speak. So, lovely sentiment, I guess. I slept in the tents of the Palestinian families who 2 decades earlier had been evicted from their homes and now reside in ramshackle tents, many times demolished by the Zionist army and always under threat of the next demolition. We stayed with them in hopes of preventing the inevitable attacks by the nearby colonists. Haji Khalil, an elder in his 80s, had been brutally beaten by colonists the year before I met him. He was, again, along with his wife, brutally beaten the year after meeting him. In encounters with the army, which has a military base near Susia, I would often hear them call the occupied West Bank, Judea, and Samaria, testament to their ignorance and brainwashing. Then again, the Zionist occupation army website doesn't even pretend to recognize Palestine either, historic or current, likewise referring to Judea and Samaria. It reminds me of that thing that Netanyahu got caught of this week, right? Where he had his map that didn't include that kind of stuff. Right. Khalil, Hebron itself is one of the most phenomenally brazen examples of illegal Jewish colonist control of Palestinian land. Roughly 800 armed colonists have the run H2 in an area of Khalil under full Zionist control. Particularly in Tel Rumeida, the attacks have been frequent and severe over the years, their statistic aggression supported by Zionist soldiers. The Palestinians of all ages are frequently targeted, and families have been brutally evicted from their homes by the colonists who then occupy the homes. Many times over in occupied Palestine, I found myself and other solidarity activists doing themes which seemed to be an utter waste of time. In Khalil, we would stand for hours near the military checkpoints and monitor whether Palestinians were unduly being held back or prevented passage by the Zionist soldiers. In some cases, our presidents shamed the soldiers and Palestinians were allowed passage, but in most cases, the soldiers were so belligerent they didn't care whether we saw and filmed their acts of cruelty against Palestinians. Often, we too were detained or arrested by Zionist soldiers when refusing to leave an area suddenly deemed a closed military zone, a tactic the Zionist armies used to keep both Palestinians and internationals out of an area, and also to annex more Palestinian land, as was the case of Susia. On Shuhada, Martyr Street, once the thriving and prosperous main street of Khalil, now a ghost street, homes shuttered, and racist hate graffiti sprayed on doors and walls, we would sit for hours under the sun, merely as a presence which might dissuade the colonists from attacking Palestinian children as they walked to school, or Palestinian women and elders as they moved about. Sitting for hours seemed like a colossal waste of time, but in many cases, being present did actually enable a degree of safe passage. We participated in rebuilding homes demolished by the Zionist military under feeble pretexts of lack of building permits, Israeli granted, or zoning laws. On one such occasion, the family we were with was rebuilding for a third time. The Israeli Committee Against House Demolitions estimates that at least 27,000 Palestinian homes have been demolished since 1967, not including those bombed in Gaza. Again, all these numbers are going to be way low since it's way more now. Under the Prowler Plan, the Zionists intend to displace 70,000 Palestinians with Israeli citizenship, destroying 35 villages in the Negev Desert, occupied Palestine. In olive season, we joined families in areas known for brutal attacks by the illegal colonists, harvesting olives with the Palestinian locals until the inevitable attacks occurred. On one occasion, a Palestinian received a nasty head wound from the hefty rocks slung at him. I narrowly missed receiving a rock to the temple, my camera hand blocking it. The 6 or so colonists on a hill above us were not chagrined when we yelled that they were going to kill someone, was after all their intent. Another absurdity during olive harvest season and in general to any farmer trying to access his or her land is the need to obtain a permit, one granted or not by the Zionists, and even with this permit, there's no guarantee that the Palestinians will be able to access and work on their land. During a military invasion in the old city of Nablus, in the north of the West Bank, we walked the streets to bring food to Palestinians trapped in their homes and escorted those who had been outside of their homes when the curfew was imposed. At one point during the evening lockdown, after escorting 3 women to houses surrounded by Zionist soldiers, a Palestinian medic we were with was taken captive by the soldiers, blindfolded and handcuffed, and used as a human shield to deter Palestinian resistance from fighting back against the invading soldiers. None of our attempts to negotiate his release were successful, informing the soldiers that taking civilians, medics yet, captive as human shields was illegal, had absolutely no impact. After all, Zionists are above the law. Belin, a village north of Ramallah, was one of the first villages to protest the gargantuan illegal wall the Zionists are building, which snakes deeply into the already occupied West Bank. Since 2005, men, women, children, elders from Berlin have marched every Friday on their land, protesting the latest Zionist annexation and the loss of 60% of village land. They are systematically met with an assault of live ammunition, rubber-coated, metal bullets, and volleys of tear gas. The rubber bullets are in fact metal bearings with a very thin coating of rubber, often intentionally split open before being shot in order to inflict maximum injury. They are meant for use only on the legs, but Zionist soldiers routinely shoot at the face. The amount of tear gas fired on Berlin protesters is staggering, but more lethal is the manner in which they are fired. Often they are shot directly at the person, which in the case of Bassam Abu Rahim resulted in his death. Shot from a mere few meters away with high-velocity tear gas canister, Bassam didn't survive. As of his killing in April 2009, he was the 18th protesting against the wall to be murdered by the Zionist army. Many 14 to 16-year-olds and a 10-year-old among the dead. Those seen as organizers are systematically abducted both during the demonstrations and also during night raids on the village, and are usually kept without charge for months on end, some of the 134 Palestinians being held in Zionist prisons under administrative detention. Participating in Berlin and the numerous other Palestinian villages holding such Gandhian protests, we marched with them and were likewise debilitated by the clouds of tear gas. When it seemed the army was going to abduct a Palestinian, we would attempt to de-arrest him or her, on one occasion by wrapping our limbs around Adib, one of Berlin many times abducted protesters. We managed to fend off his arrest, but took a beating to the body and kicking to the head before the soldiers lobbed a tear gas canister directly at us. The irony of such brutality on the various nonviolent protests is that corporate media often say, "Why aren't there any Palestinian Gandhis?" But every day of surviving under Zionist rule is in itself nonviolent protest, not to mention the actual demonstrations happening every week. What was that quote you talked about from Toure earlier? You know, for nonviolence to work?
Your enemy must have a conscience.
Which clearly they don't in this case. So
actually, let me try and find while you read. Let me try and find the exact.
Yep.
Well, I'm sure I say it.
While I've witnessed horrific acts of violence and degradation against Palestinians at the hand of the Zionist army and colonists, in my roughly 4 years in occupied Palestine, I've also surprisingly seen much beauty, generosity, culture, and resilience. This would not be surprising to anyone who knows Palestinians, but to an observer, hearing only of the various wars the Zionist state inflicts on the occupied Palestinians, one would hardly expect beauty in life to flourish. However, suffering and tragedy far outweigh joy and hope in an imbalance similar to that of the power imbalance between the heavily armed Zionist state and the armed with rocks and homemade rockets occupied Palestinians. The least we can do, is to work on shifting that power imbalance towards one of justice. So that's it. That's Eva's thoughts on the matter. So,
So I found the exact quote.
Okay.
But to give context, Kure was talking about Dr. King regarding his nonviolent stance.
Yeah.
So he said, Dr. King's policy was that nonviolence would achieve the gains for Black people in the United States. His major assumption was that if you are nonviolent, if you suffer, your opponent will see your suffering and be moved to change his heart. That's very good. He only made one facetious assumption. In order for nonviolence to work, your opponent must have a conscience.
Yeah.
The United States has
none.
So, yeah. So it's the idea, basically, like in terms of kind of, and you can kind of see the Christian knees of it with Dr. King at the time.
Yeah, turn the other cheek and all
where
that.
It's like turn the other cheek, like if someone hurts you or ridicules you and all that, and like, and Corma's, argument is that in order to appeal to their humanity, in order for them to stop,
Yeah.
they have to have a heart, and the United States has none. And I think is very apparent now. I think for us in the space, it's very apparent. But I think given what's happening to Israel, they also have no heart. So it's like, but it's almost kind of like a lose-lose for Palestinians. For them not to fight back is damaging to them, and lives are being lost. And to resist makes the Israeli government even more angry to respond that they'll go over the top in order to exterminate them. So it's like,
yeah,
Palestinians are losing out given their position. But it's very, but going along with what Ava was saying, it's kind of interesting with how, in a lot of ways, just even her presence,
yeah,
helped to kind of deter some of the violence, if not even just a little bit. So I think it kind of goes to show, I think, the power of the international community has in terms of how to, not to necessarily stop the violence, but at least to keep it at bay for a moment.
Yeah.
So
I mean, even she said that was futile on top of that, which is like, I'm sure frustrating. So
sure. And I think maybe frustrating in the sense, given what she was saying, that I feel like she probably wish I want to do more.
Yeah.
But I think even just the idea of her being there and given
now
people that we've spoken to, and
now we know how Israel
that,
treats aid workers, since plenty of them have perished by doing the same thing, right? Rachel Corrie and the aid workers from Jose Andres's organization, who I've got problems with, but the people still should not have been deliberately targeted. But yeah, I mean, I think that, and she mirrors talks from other people who have been in the region saying the same things. So, I read those, and I just get the sense of like that could have been written yesterday.
It's fair.
Right. You know what I mean? We hear journalists talk about that now who are in the region. So, I think my despair is just the fact that there's change not happening. So,
right.
And until that is the case, I will still be ranting and still be raving about it, because these are humans being slaughtered at this point. So, I will do the least I can do for my little holdout here in, what feels like occupied Florida. But, you know, not nearly as bad. So, you know, yeah, I mean, it's just frustrating to say the least. And I know me and you feel that way after every story, every week. You know, like we're tired of talking about it, you know, and I think if we're tired, let's
preface by saying it's not that we don't want to talk about it, but it's
Yeah.
just the fatigue of talking about story after story after story after story after story regarding Gaza, and like nothing is happening, nothing is working. And I think what makes me really infuriated is like the push Biden left crowd is like silent in terms of, oh, and they're trying to do, they really haven't said it, but they're kind of implying it in terms of, oh, we will vote for Kamala because
when Kamala has made it very clear,
she's less genocidal than Trump will be.
Like imagine sitting there talking to a Palestinian and trying to convince them to vote for someone who said that nothing will fundamentally change. Like that's a good thing to their face. Imagine doing that and sleeping at night. What? Anyway.
Right. Well, they can because it doesn't really affect them, or they just deny it.
It's
so they don't have to think about it. But it's basically the lie that they tell themselves.
Yes.
That, we know that they suck, and we listen to what they say.
And it's really at this point, but Trump will be worse on it. How? In what way? Well, it's going to be a worse genocide. How can a genocide be worse? And what, it's already is worse.
Right. And it's like the Democrats have given Biden a head start.
Yeah.
So it's like, and there's no guarantee that Gaza is going to exist in 2 months.
Oh.
Like, we could very well exterminate Palestinians by November. So, and given that, if that's the case, Trump doesn't have to do anything. The Democrats would have done his dirty work for him. So it's just the idea of this. And I really haven't heard people say this because I think people have learned since 2020 about the idea of pushing Biden left, and they didn't. And like, look what happened. So
this is every 4 years this happens.
That talking point now, but like, it's kind of implied that that's what they plan to do.
Well, and how many times
Kamala left on the issue when? Again, given the first story I talked about, J Street, she's already been unequivocal in saying Israel has a right to defend itself. Meaning, I am not changing the policies that basically my donors told me to do. So fuck off.
Well,
essentially is what she
said. How many times we have to tell people that electoralism in any way, shape, or form will not be the answer here. And it's one of the other reasons why I wanted to bring this. Look at the tangible things EVA was a part of, right? Like being there, helping them pull in goods for themselves, helping the, like tangible actions are what will fix things. And until people start focusing on those actions that they can take and ignoring everything else, we're in for a bad time. Because that is how they distract you from doing the things we need to do. And talking about that kind of stuff is the reason we're demonetized on YouTube. So go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork or scan that QR code on your screen and help keep us in biz over here. If you're in the live chat, you can put !donate if you so want to. Nightbot will send you a little link. And if you can't give monetarily, just liking and subscribing, hitting that share button, trying to get us to as many people as possible, and letting us know what you think. Leave a comment. We do read them. We appreciate your feedback. So please don't be shy and get in those comment sections. Otherwise, thanks for watching. So, all right. Last check on Rockfin and Rumble.
Right.
Himkar said, Gandhi said, not a finger can be lifted against the Arabs considering the overwhelming odds. He also said Kwame Ture said that. Not sure if he meant that specific statement. But yeah, A-Rib bringing up Liz Cheney because, turns out like the Cheneys need to be listened to in any capacity. Like, fuck those people, Like, I wish people could just like turn off that spigot. It's shoved in your face every day, and we all make mistakes of focusing on that. And it's like if you could just ignore a lot of those folks, we'd be better off. See, Rumble still got the 8 lizard people watching, so use those thumbs, hit the like button. Let us know you're not Illuminati. We appreciate it. Make sure Peter Thiel doesn't got your tongue. Anyway, what do you got on YouTube's? Robbie Burns in the chat. I always feel like Robbie Burns is a reference to Robbie Burns, famous Scottish poet. But I don't believe it is. We had Sam Husseini on earlier. She did. Go check that out. I think Vanessa was alongside Kevork Almasian. So go check that out. Egregores.
Egregores said genocide, well, it's bad and gay.
Yep. So Mastermind Hour and Bad Cookies, they had a decent podcast. So, so they run Tin Rabbit. See, I know some things. I knew that. But yeah. Anything else? Zionism is terrorism, says Kill Your Egregores. How the fuck can any compassionate creature of any empathy of what is human support this? And it's been happening for a minute, has it not? So, but, yeah. Anyway, you ready to get to our last one?
Yep. So you brought in the extra.
I did. It's pretty short. So we've been talking a bit about it tonight, but I wanted to bring this because, we're told, especially among people who still deal with electoralism in any capacity, that, you can't focus on single issues, Collin. Well, I'm here to tell you people that a lot of these single issues you talk about have overarching ramifications. It's almost like all problems are interconnected. It's almost like that's the case. So I wanted to bring this because it speaks to the surveillance crowd and people who don't want their data taken from them and just Orwellian censorship and all that fun stuff. So, incarceration.com trademark, friends of the show, writes, Texas is buying Tangles, an AI-powered surveillance platform. So you're probably wondering why I would find that important, right? And this is all about border security and all that stuff, which, I've seen a lot of our brothers and sisters go down a weird road when it comes to thoughts on the border. So we're going to get into why they are trying to manipulate your emotions there. So again, Tangles, AI-powered surveillance platform created by the IDF in Israel. Funny how that works. That scrapes information from open, deep, and dark web. Tangles was created by Cobwebs, a company founded by IDF Special Ops veteran, was brought to Texas by Governor Abbott, who claims to need this to secure the border, which was used in conjunction with Operation Lone Star, the controversial Texas program of aggressive pursuits of migrants and dangerous desert maneuvers that have cost 17 National Guards their lives on duty for Operation Lone Star. Any questions so far, Collin? I feel like just that paragraph alone, a lot of IDF involvement in this, right? So, and again, scrapes information from the open, deep, and dark web. So
it's not just police anymore. It's
right.
AI tech.
And I don't know if you want anything designed by the IDF scraping your social media right now in Texas. So, you know, be careful out there, fam. So the company's WebLock has the ability to track different mobile devices' whereabouts in a specific virtual area through geofencing. No search warrants are needed to harvest and utilize the data. Cobwebs was founded by Israeli intelligence and sold to U.S.-based company Pinlink in November of 2023. Right? Again, all these blue links are sublinks.
Curious as to the date.
Yes. So go check that out in the description below. I have this article linked. You can click on all these blue sublinks. So especially this Texas Department of Public Safety, that one's important. So Texas Department of Public Safety finalizes contract for Tangle's surveillance tool. ICE, IRS, and DPS have been using Tangles, with DPS having the largest contract of them. Okay? So the Department of Public Safety plans to spend millions in taxpayer dollars on a controversial software used first as part of Governor Abbott's border crackdown to disrupt political... I'm busy! Cat, we're doing the news. Well, I get it, all right? Jesus. He's just yelling at me.
So loud, I had a cat here.
Nah, dude, it's just...
I never hear your cat.
I know, man. It's weird. So bro, really? Like, I get it. You want up here? Huh? Are you just being weird? Huh? Oh, fine. You can come do the news too. I don't care. Oh, so DPS plans to spend millions.
Watch the views go up exponentially because
just because I have a cat. So, Israeli startup specializes in developing cyber intelligence solutions for enforcement bodies, national security agencies, and financial services worldwide. You good? Okay, bye. Fine. So I brought this, Collin. I wanted to show people like what this could entail. So we're gonna watch this video, right? And I do believe this might have been Miami. So, but very similar problems here, right? And I want you to look at the ridiculous, like Batman level nonsense that this will include. So I'm going to change the playback speed a little, and we're going to throw this on it, and we're going to go with that.
Cameras in Department of Transportation. I know what's going on right now, any place in this county. Aviation, if they're up, whoever's working, I can click on their camera right now and I can watch their interaction.
Can I see it?
Live Google. This is a big, big deal. And
what do you mean like Google?
So I'm going to show you right now. I can tell you where everybody is, what they're doing, and then I can also bring up, any intersection I want in the county.
Okay.
Right now.
So you're bringing up live CCTV cameras right now?
Bringing up live cameras.
Wow. You have eyes and ears everywhere.
Everywhere. Okay. But I can go to any intersection and pull it up right now. So if there's a crash, if someone says we're in a pursuit, whatever it might be, it shows me right now. Plus, it shows me every single person working. The stars are where my deputies are. It tells me what they're doing, what they're on, what calls for service. It's important for me to have my finger on the pulse constantly.
Is a traffic stop right here?
So this is Deputy Austin, and right now I can see his body-worn camera. So it's as if we're on scene. We got this county locked down.
So that's the kind of stuff we're dealing with here. So
300 plus.
Like, do you remember the Batman movie where Morgan Freeman was like, you need to destroy this? We've used it once, but no one is allowed to have this much power. Like,
yes.
Is that not literally like the same setup?
Basically.
So one more video. So this is from The Last American Vagabond, which I won't have to do that. But with Whitney Webb, which, we're big fans of hers over here. And she's going to explain why this border crisis thing is being used to promote people like Governor Abbott engaging in these like digital surveillance companies, right? And it goes even deeper than that, unfortunately.
So let's start with the article we discussed. We have mentioned this before, we've touched on it, but this is such a really, this point alone is very obvious to anybody that I think is not pulled into one partisan side of the other. I mean, obviously the border, the wall, going from a wall to a a smart wall is the best way to put it, is an interesting shift from Trump's perspective, right? And so go ahead and start wherever you'd like on this and why you think this connects to a larger sort of honeypot sort of manipulation discussion.
Yeah, so first off, the Sustainable Development Goals, also known as Agenda 2030 from the UN, one of the main policy agendas there is to have biometric entry and exit systems for every country. This is being rolled out in lockstep throughout the entire world right now. And this year it's being implemented, I think next month it starts actually being implemented in Europe. For foreign travelers entering Europe. The UK rolls it out next year. And of course, there's a big push for it to do it in the US and also in other countries. It's intimately tied up with the whole digital ID agenda that's been ongoing for a very long time. And particularly during the COVID era, as I'm sure you are aware and your audience is aware, there was a big push against digital ID and vaccine passports, which were sort of a beta test for the digital ID system during the COVID era. And currently we are seeing an effort to manufacture consent among right-leaning Americans who opposed vaccine passports and digital ID to get them to go along with this biometric entry-exit agenda. That's at its core a globalist agenda, and also an intelligence-linked surveillance agenda. I mean, fundamentally the same at the end of the day, but under different rhetoric. And so essentially, what we've had over the past year, right, is a lot of increased attention paid by the media to the situation on the U.S.-Mexico border. It's important to point out that the U.S.-Mexico border for decades and decades has been very insecure. And even though rhetoric has been different between presidents, no president, including Trump, has ever shut down that border. No one has constructed a physical barrier. Trump campaigned on that, but by 2019 had pivoted away from a physical barrier, what he called at that point a medieval wall. No medieval walls, he said. No, we're going to have a smart wall. Yeah. And the smart wall is not a physical wall at all. It's enabled by drones and AI, surveillance cameras, surveillance towers that dot the U.S.-Mexico border. And this is actually an effort that precedes Trump significantly. It was first launched after 9/11 as SBINet by the newly created DHS. And was relatively unsuccessful because of, I think it was like Boeing and some other, super bloated, corrupt U.S. government contractors that were creating a system owned by the government, and they were, milking money and being incompetent and slow to make profit, as contractors are the big ones, are wont to do. And so in comes this new startup by this guy named Palmer Luckey, who was part of the Peter Thiel network. Probably best known, Palmer Luckey, for creating Oculus Rift, the virtual reality system that was sold to Facebook, which Facebook, again, is a company that was essentially, we think of Mark Zuckerberg as creating it, but it would not exist without Peter Thiel, who was the person that turned Facebook into the company it is and was on its board for a very long time. So Palmer Luckey, involved with Facebook and then leaves, and then Thiel starts funding his defense startup, AI defense startup, called Anduril, which is tied up with this same network of companies Thiel is responsible for that are contractors to the military and intelligence communities of the U.S., including Palantir, of course, being the main a company in that web, but Anduril is intimately connected because of people like Trey Stevens, who's been at Palantir, works for Thiel's Founders Fund. Founders Fund invested in Anduril. Trey Stevens co-created Anduril with Palmer Luckey. Trey Stevens was also involved with Trump's DoD transition team, which Peter Thiel was also intimately involved in. And Trey Stevens was also on the board and still is on the board of Carbine 911, which is the 911 emergency system company that was heavily funded by Jeffrey Epstein, basically created by former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and Unit 8200 officials. to take over essentially the US 911 call system. And turn it into like a system that has pre-crime and extreme surveillance functionality. So Trey Stevens is involved with that crowd. And within Carbine 911 is a woman named Latal Lashem, a career Israeli intelligence operative who currently works for Eric Prince of Blackwater fame, who is also very much inserted into this network and the network behind the Trump administration, essentially. So these are, and it's important to point out too, Andrew Palantir, Trey Stevens, Peter Thiel, these guys all have extreme CIA connections, extreme deep state connections. This is the supposed deep state that Trump supporters are supposed to hate. And they are the ones building the smart wall. And this, obviously there's a very insecure and troubling situation on the border, but people only care about it because it's being given extreme media attention and, concern about it is being drummed up as a way to manufacture consent for something must be done. And the something that must be done, of course, is the smart wall. And this is being pitched within independent media by people like Brett Weinstein on Tucker Carlson, being pitched by people like Colonel Douglas McGregor, who also, I believe, had some sort of advisory role in the Trump administration. And unfortunately, the smart wall is not something that's going to promote individual liberty or freedom. It is this exact same UN biometric entry and exit system that depends heavily on digital ID.
So, any questions, Care Bear? Oh, Whitney spits a lot out at people. So, yeah. So the only thing that I get from a lot of these people who talk about it, and I know Whitney doesn't have this problem, she gets it, but this idea of the border being insecure as a problem in and of itself, right?
Right.
To me, you talk about individual freedoms. It shouldn't matter what imaginary lines there are, but that to me is one thing. As just a humanist by nature, I find that a little odd, right? I get that there's some resources that our country wants to keep ours, right? But, at the end of the day, I don't think the kind of actions when in regard to that border security are very necessary. I think dealing with the underlying problems that cause that influx of immigration and whatever. Now, from what I've heard, that number has been going down, yes. And it's like more people are leaving the border to go to Mexico than they are, and not mentioning all the immigration that doesn't happen at a border at all, right? Like any of the immigration from Europe or any of the other places that, you got to get on a jet plane to get over here. So I don't know. I'm not an expert in any of that stuff. So,
well, it's the idea of we don't have enough programs for people if for whatever reason they need to come here, that they're able to come here legally.
Right.
And
to me, the answer to immigration is make it easier to immigrate legally, and you don't have as many problems with that.
Right.
So,
in the same way that, and people call me a child of, like everything about a child of God because I am a Black immigrant, but I'm a U.S. citizen.
Right.
And I came here legally. I was very fortunate, given the means that at that time, and I was a child, that I was able to immigrate here legally as a permanent resident, and that was the pathway for me to become a citizen later.
Yeah.
So, and there needs to be, but again, the core issue, and I said this on Savvy's panel, I think it's over a month ago now. We don't talk about why are immigrants willing to come over here in the first place.
What usually the problem is, they took our jobs, right? But not any talk about why they've outsourced your job out of the country to other places. Like Germany just lost their Volkswagen plant to it being sent to Mexico, and then they blame the immigrant, right? That's classic. classic problems with that. So you know,
Right.
but
Given our coups and sanctions on all these countries, especially in Latin America, like they're stifled, and then they're willing to come here and work like
well, you want to talk about foreign intervention?
for crappy wages, because relatively it's more than probably that they were getting in their countries now, given the sanctions that we put in
Well,
those countries to begin with.
Drug wars,
That-
political instability we've caused, like our globalist like problems, which to me, in an ideal society, a global government to me wouldn't be a problem if particular safety nets and stuff are put in place. Having said that, I don't trust any of those people with power to actually make good decisions there. So,
right.
But I did want to focus on this aspect of a lot of these foreign problems are interconnected with domestic problems, right? If you're worried about censorship and surveillance here, you need to be worried about what's happening elsewhere. So there's a reason why Israelis come over here and train our police force, because they know how to oppress well. That clearly is the thing. And we've shown time and time again how they use things like WhatsApp and digital ways of surveillance over there and AI targeting and all that stuff. So, you know, I think Whitney gets more direct with who's part of the cause here in this country, right? You know, particularly millionaires and billionaires who have their best interest to try to control the population, are willing to do these things. So in the, you know, guise of forward movement, you know, so, and like my issue is not with the technology, it's with how it's being used and manipulated by, you know, moneyed powers, as it tends to be, you know. So, but yeah, I just thought it was interesting to bring. But talking about these things is why we're demonetized. You can go to ko-fi.com/indienewsnetwork or scan that QR code on your screen, or use the !donate command in the chat, and Nightbot will send you a little link to that. But if you can't give monetarily, we understand. We just, you know, ask you to help try to get the word out. Like and subscribe, share this stream. You know, we're heavily suppressed, as you might think. But leave a comment. Let us know what you think. You know, how do you feel about that stuff? And, you know, help us get to 3K. We're getting there. But otherwise, thanks for watching. What do you got, Care Bear? Probably check Rockfin.
Actually doing something else first, but
Denver Adway's talking about Airwolf for some reason. You know, you ever play Airwolf, Collin? You know, a little helicopter game.
No.
But anyway, what do you got on YouTube?
Give me a second. Don't see anything. Oh, Abby Joe. They taking them black jobs. Lol.
Yep. Bryce Smith says this is scary. Rome even talked about this on RBN. Mouse FS, when you leave your house, you're basically always on camera. Yep. So, and
like,
be careful
here's
of.
the thing. Like, fun fact: I have global entry. So it's basically like TSA pre-check, but like more in terms of, you know, I'm able to enter the country, you know, from like if I'm entering the US, like I basically have my information where it expedites like that process.
People should look into the history of Ellis Island. I find it actually interesting to talk about, because it changed hands multiple times of who owned that particular facility, right? And like the views on how they treated that differ pretty severely as far as the like support they gave, right? And, you know, just quality of life there, because essentially you had to stay there for like a period of time while they processed you. So, you know, I find that interesting when we talk about immigration in this country. We didn't always have the same views we do now on it.
Right.
The ghost of Henry Kissinger says we could easily secure the border, but immigrants commit less crime, provide us cheaper labor, and make it easier to fearmonger. Right.
Yep.
So, you know,
right.
Again, if you're worried about the security of our border, which I was also reading that, like, America itself, the country, is like uninvadable, quote unquote, right? Like, military experts talk about how it's just physically very difficult to invade as a country. Like, you either got a East Coast, West Coast entry, right? You'd have a beach invasion. You know, you have a couple of mountain ranges to go past, and then a desert, and then the Midwest, right? Like, to get across the country is not easy. Or you got to go through the frozen waste of Hoth above us, or the entire desert landscape below us, right? The only issue with that is the people who already live in the frozen waste of Hoth and the desert below us. So that's like our only issue with that. So if you get Mexico on your side or Canada on your side, as far as a world war is concerned, that's a problem for us, especially when what's so close to Canada, our biggest enemy right now, you know,
Russia.
Sarah Palin can see it from her house, which is why we have Alaska as a stopgap. You know, and we're really not worried about we're worried about South America, but I think as long as we can keep Central America and Mexico on our side, you know, which I find funny. You'd think we'd want to work with Mexico more, but we don't. So yeah, anyway, do you know what's happening this week? Did Indy send you that updated list?
No, but I can probably guess.
This is a couple of weeks ago, this calendar, but you know, generally same stuff. Always check our Twitter at Genedy News. We always try to send out updates that way, so go give it a follow.
Right. So tomorrow night, more than likely, politically homeless with Crab and Himbo at 9. All these times are Eastern time, by the way. Friday, Angel in the afternoon at 7 p.m. 10:30 p.m. American Tradition Clip Show. Saturday, more than likely, Snow Himbo's Gaming at 11 p.m. Sunday, How Do We Miss That? At 10.
Yep.
With you and Indy. Followed by Boats at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
Monday, we have the Maple Files with Yeti and Himbo. Tuesday, probably nothing. That's Jesse's off week. And then, unless we do something to fill in the space, we'll find out on Twitter if we do. And then next week, we will be back here with INN News. So
same bad time.
I don't think there's any major changes from our normal schedule this week.
Yep.
So
we're
good.
I also think Crab and them went on with the Homeless Left, I think, with Pasta and them. So go check that out. I'm sure they put stuff out on Twitter, so go follow them. Links to all the members' Twitters and socials are Indie News Network. If you look for that link tree in the description below. I think Nightbot also puts it in chat for people if they want to go check that out. Make sure they're followed all our stuff. But yeah, I think that's about it. So anything you gotta say?
Said Himbo more or less
stopped his gaming. Yep, he probably got done with the couple of games he was playing. So I gave him a very Canadian game of dog sled game. So a little Iditarod game. I kind of wanted him to play that. So we'll see if I can convince him to pull that Canadian nonsense up. But
get him a Switch.
Yep.
Tell him play. I don't know.
Nah, PC gaming way better. But you know, not that there's not emulators. Nintendo, don't listen. Emulators don't exist. You're safe. Don't worry about it. But anyway, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Go give to Shanda. GoFundMe's pinned at the top of the chat. I'll also probably put it in the description for clips and stuff just in case. But yeah, go give to her. She needs some support right now, so any little bit helps. But otherwise, as always, kids, labels are bad. Stay independent. Good night, fam.
Have a good week, everyone.
We want to talk right down to earth in a language that everybody here can easily understand.
Bye, have a great time.